Welcome to Portsmouth This Week. This is the August 3rd, 2012 edition. I'm Jeff Richard. I'll be hosting today, and we have with us our Chief of Police, Chief Lance Hebert, and also our Town Administrator, John Klimm. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about, with the Chief, about things police, and a little bit about what else is going on in town with Mr. Klimm. First question, Chief. We're a small town, but we've got a lot of activity and a lot of people going through our town. How is your department sized in relationship to what you have to do?
Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you very much for having me here today. The Portsmouth Police Department is currently staffed with 31 officers. Over the years, staffing becomes a part of several different influences. Number one, population. The general philosophy and the guideline to go by is usually one officer for every 2,000 residents. So roughly, the police department should be somewhere, if on an average of 18,000 people, say, should have a staffing of approximately 36 officers. A correction, there should be 2 for every 1,000 residents. But what we've shown in the past is we go upon what our crime rates are, we go upon what our calls to service are, we go upon what we've been able to handle through the years and delegate the work and make sure that we're able to keep the peace and be able to stay up with all of our major duties. And then we take all of that into consideration, basically, when we come down with a final tally of what does it actually take so that our overtime budget and our work process can be done, and it can be done properly.
Is this principally what we find in Middletown and other communities very similar to ours?
Yeah.
Not so much in Newport, I suppose, and certainly not in Providence.
Well, that philosophy is taken by all police departments across the United States. That philosophy is handed down by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. It's also governed by, say, the FBI when they do their crime statistics and they do their crime reporting, and they figure out exactly what does it really take for amount of officers to handle a certain population. And then also what's taken into consideration, and I've placed it in the budget before, is that you have to figure in all your specialty things that each community is responsible for. And where certain things come into play is during our summer months. Absolutely, we live next to one of the busiest recreational and tourist attractions. And you have to take that into consideration because during the months of April, say, through October, we become very busy. And it's not only our roadways, but it's the amount of people that actually pour onto this island for all the major events.
John, in Barnstable, it's a very similar kind of circumstance for police staffing?
Well, the formula that the chief mentioned is similar, but the communities are different. First of all, Barnstable's a lot bigger, and Barnstable is more like Newport, where it has a huge influx of summer population, so it's kind of different in that respect. But in terms of the numbers of officers, not only in any community is a function of what the perceived need is, but I think increasingly so, it's obviously a function of our ability to pay. We're limited financially, and I think that the chief could talk about this better than I, but the responsibilities and the role of our police departments over the last 3 or 4 decades have hugely expanded, where police departments are now involved with the schools much more than they were in the past, and other programming, and so there has been an evolution of the role of our police that I think is a factor in terms of the numbers of officers that you have.
Yeah, that's a really good question. What are the major things that your folks are doing in the department?
Well, our daily function is to not only keep the peace, but is our traffic enforcement. It is our investigation of all crimes. It's our ability to be able to investigate and prosecute, meaning go to court and see these cases through. We also have a number of other different functions, and through the time, and Mr. Klimm just hit on it, was over the last, say, 7 years, we've had to cut out certain things, such as our DARE program, such as our school resource officer program. We've had to restructure how we give services to the public, such as when they can come in to do VIN inspections, which is required by the state if anybody buys a new car or a used car. We also have seatbelt or child seat protection that we receive federal grant money for, and we get officers trained, but that also becomes an issue of when can I have the officers on duty to be able to do it, and when is it feasible, or when is it the best time for people to come in to be able to have that done. There's elderly affairs, there's juvenile, our Explorers program.
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding how we really need police officers to do most of those things that we couldn't train good Boy Scouts to do some of that stuff. What? I'm being facetious.
Yes.
But how about our crime statistics? The serious part of your business.
Yes.
What happens here in Portsmouth, and how do you chart it, and who do you report to?
Okay. We have a very good computer system that is used by all of the towns and cities in the state of Rhode Island pretty much. And through that, everything that comes through the police department is documented. From your just normal calls of service, or just for helping down a broken motorist, all the way up to investigating a breaking, entering, or serious sexual assaults and so forth. We average, and we have been increasing over the last 7 to 10 years, our calls to service. Calls to service this year should probably be up over 24,000. Now,
Wow.
24,000 calls to service,
That's a lot of numbers.
you average that out, and that is the entire spectrum, from the most smallest minute detail for where an elderly person is calling for the police to be able to maybe who has a problem with some juveniles running through their yard. It could be boundary disputes. It could be, blockages in the roadway. It is all of our traffic enforcement programs, and it is all of our incidents that we actually take a report on, where someone had something stolen from them, vandalized, and so forth. So out of those, breakdowns are, on the average, we average around 2,000 incidents, meaning those are reported and those have to be followed up.
Because we have a lot of cars passing through this.
Well, that's just incidents. In reference to our total stops, I mean, we average somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000
When you
car
said breakdowns, you meant car breakdowns.
Well, a breakdown of incidents, arrests, total stops, car stops, because not every car stop results in issuance of a ticket.
Right.
It could be just a verbal warning, or it could be a written warning. It could be what they call a notice in demand, which is a ticket to fix anything that's mechanical failure on the vehicle. And we average between, in the high 4,000s, almost sometimes over 5,000, depending on our manning structure for that given year.
Because in the summertime, and depending on the time of day, you're chock-a-block with cars. East and West Main Road.
Yes. Yes.
Nothing but cars.
No, and we have detailed patrol assignments to do patrol, to do traffic. On the average, the individual officer does roughly around 2 hours worth of traffic enforcement a day, on the average. And we try to keep that going. And those are usually where the officer in charge, or where our traffic safety officer, plots certain areas where we're having problems, or we're getting the complaints in. And that's separate and apart from East and West Main Road, because we handle probably 99% of all the traffic flow on East and West Main Road. The State Police Barracks is closed down again.
It is?
Yes,
I didn't know that.
It has been since early February.
How do they explain that? Why is
Those
it
are budget costs.
You can
Yes.
reattach there.
Yes.
All budget.
All budget.
So no cars are coming out of that
No.
facility. Okay.
And over the years, it was shut down for many years before that.
Yes.
And the troopers and the state police, they have the same problems that we have as a municipality, and that is the manning and where are their needs.
Yeah. So basically, then these are East and West Main Roads are state roads, but you guys are paying attention to them.
If it's in our jurisdiction, we're responsible.
What streets and areas of our town are the most troubling for you?
Well, besides East and West Main Road, which, I was born and brought up in this town, and seen East and West Main Road change, and especially when I came back from the service. And a lot of people don't understand that it's a very dangerous road, both of them.
They are.
East Main even worse. It's design. They weren't designed to handle 20-some thousand cars a day. The lanes are smaller than most lanes in other towns or jurisdictions, because they came from cart paths, and unlike other cities where they have the time to set up proper roadways That wasn't done here, and it's going to go back and forth for many years to come. But we also have our second artery routes, which is our Middle Road, our Union Street, our Headley, our old Mill Lane. We have also our other connecting offshoots from East and West Main Road get down into our more coastal or down towards the water into either residential, which, you know, by our zoning, we have to try to connect all of these roads and connect all of these residential areas. When it does so, it does make it easier for us to be able to get into residential areas, but on the same token, it also increases the amount of either accidents or problem areas that you do have now within these residential areas.
So most of the accidents we see are East and West Main roads?
The majority of our accidents are in East Main. What they'll do is you'll see the percentage go down to then our second arterial routes and then down into the residential areas.
We tried something right by the school to go to a single lane, convert the 4 lanes to 2.
Yes.
Or 3, actually, isn't it?
Yes, that was.
How does
well,
that
it's 2 lanes with a passing lane.
Yes.
Okay, or a turn lane. Excuse me. That project worked tremendously, and I know there was a little bit of obsolescence to it when it first came in. People called it a suicide lane. But if they travel outside the state of Rhode Island,
it's common.
It's not only common; it is proven that if you to slow down traffic, you need traffic design and through education. But through the design, what it does is it causes people to slow down. If you go East Main Road, north of Clements all the way to Boyd Lane, you're going to notice that you can actually enjoy the ride and actually see the businesses because it makes people slow down. After we had that done, the state did a traffic count, and we've done an accident count ever since that. And our accident rate went down over 20%. Which was unheard of. But the big thing that the state DOT reported back, we saw a decrease in speeding by almost 8%, or the overall.
Why with those tremendous statistics, why can't we convert East Main Road all the way?
Well,
with the telephone pole only the fraction of an inch from the curb.
Well, the problem with that is 1 lane each way is designed for roughly a car or a total traffic volume for somewhat less than 13,000 cars a day. You go over and above that, it cannot handle 1 lane. You'd have traffic backup. You then need to be able to provide turn lanes on either side, along with the turn lane in the middle. So that takes space, and that's the problem with East Main Road, and will be for the future for design, and that is, where do we get the space from without invading private property? And the biggest obstacle is the utility company. Unlike other states, the state can mandate that the utilities take them and put them underground at their cost. That can't be done in the state of Rhode Island.
Without a change of law.
Without a change of law.
So perhaps something for our town administrator to put together with the folks who represent us, and we have several people who do represent us out there in that legislature.
Yeah, from what I understand, that's the biggest
Since I
trouble.
moved here in 1991, and I have felt heartbroken at the things that happen traffic-wise on East Main Road, and I've seen them. I live right off of McCrory. Somebody ran their car into a telephone pole and right at the top of the hill. It was
But those
horrific.
cases, though, also, and that is, we, the police, we distinguish between those types of accidents. And it's tough for the public to understand, and hopefully they can if I explain it. And that is, you have DWI, stolen car, or you have criminal, someone who's created a crime or committed a crime and is trying to get away from that. And when they get involved in an accident, that's different from the person going down the road doing, say, 45 and a 35.
True.
And sometimes that's when we have those major fatalities, is when people have been drinking and driving, or they have committed a crime and they're, excessive, reckless driving.
Understood. You must get some help from state and federal agencies to support the department. What's that all about?
Okay, there's certain grant monies that are given out by the federal government, and they're passed down through the state. And each of the municipalities in the state of Rhode Island usually receive portions of that. That is based upon usually the population. It's based upon the amount of officers you have in your town, but it's also based sometimes those towns or departments that actually use those funds and create statistics from them usually get a little bit higher percentage. We receive roughly for our DWI enforcement around $7,000 a year. That is to put out officers during those key times or during the times where the federal government and the state get together and do huge pushes for DWI, which is usually right around, say, St. Patrick's Day. And then during around your major holidays, Memorial, 4th of July, Labor Day, and then also before Christmas, which people don't really take as, why would they be putting out extra patrols just before Christmas? It's Christmas parties, and actually it's shown that DWI and accident rates go up approximately 2 weeks before Christmas.
I did not know that. So that some of that funding is for the overtime cost?
That pays for all of the overtime.
Your overtime last year was about 18% of your total salary.
Yes.
It's a lot of money for overtime.
Yes. Well, that gets back into either the staffing and the manning and what the town can handle in reference to splitting and divvying
so some of
that
that
all up.
is offsetting the overtime cost.
Yes, it does, and that doesn't show sometimes in the overtime when it comes back into the budget, but that's when I'm able to explain it and show that we do that. We also receive money for seatbelt enforcement through the state. We also, for speed and traffic also, meaning that we put out cars just for speed and traffic enforcement.
Right. That's coming from the state budget?
It's funneled through all federal fund, through the state, and then the state divvies that up to each of the individual communities.
So ultimately, we taxpayers are funding this one way or the other.
Oh, yes.
Depending on who we send it to. Check seems to come back. That's great. Which, it strikes me that being a police officer is certainly a tremendous responsibility, and there's so many aspects to it. But I was thinking about what a typical work week might be for an officer. Is it a 40-hour schedule? How you schedule your people? There are some busy times of the day, some less so. I mentioned 3 o'clock in the morning on a regular day. It's not too busy, but so staffing, and then you've got the overtime issue, and then you've got detailing to deal with. And I'm wondering how many hours a week can you expect an officer to stand straight up and get it done?
Well,
How much is there a restriction on
Yes,
how many
there is.
hours?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
An officer can't work past 16 hours, and they have to have a mandatory 8 off. The only time they can work past 16 hours is if I give them the okay, and that's usually only if they are out at a scene and they can't leave. And then after that, what we do is make arrangements so that officer cannot come back in for another 8 hours. So then I would if they had to come back in and work their regular shift, I would have to get someone to cover for X amount of hours so that officer had a proper 8 hours off.
So that somewhat explains some of the overtime issues, I guess.
Yes, and as far as the details go, details are assigned as they're called in, and then certain decisions are sometimes had to be made. And then sometimes we can't use officers on those details. And we tell contractors they either can't work that day, or they're going to have to provide flaggers, or they have to...
Is there a state law or a town ordinance that demands the presence of a uniformed officer for detailing like that? Or can flaggers be used?
Flaggers can be used, and all contractors know that. There's federal guidelines of how work zone sites are set up. And the state DOT takes those regulations and they use those directly. They don't have a separate set of regulations. Those are then passed down to each of the police departments, so that we have to make sure that anybody that's working on the road abides by all of those regulations. Contractors have a choice of either using a police officer or a flagger, because they have to be trained and certified through a federal program. And the officers are all certified when they go through the police academy and then go through further training. Right. But we also take into many different accounts, and that is, where is the work being done? Is it being done on a straightaway versus a curve? Is it being done at an intersection where it's heavily traveled? And because when it comes down to it, there's a liability issue, always. And if there's something that happens out there, the town will be held, personally liable if we don't properly man it, or we don't make sure that the signage and everything else is done.
I guess what I'm hearing is it's really your decision as chief when a request is made or not made. You can decide based on your experience.
Well, the state of Rhode Island does have statutory requirements in reference to the regulation of traffic, and it is deemed with each of the municipalities. And the chief of police, after actually being in charge of the traffic and being in charge of the enforcement, that's handed down through.
Great. The your budget this year, we had to make some serious decisions as to where the money was going to go, and your department had 3% less than you had.
I believe it's
4% less last year. So you had to make some adjustments.
Yes.
What did you do?
What do we do? Well, every year since I've been the chief, tough decisions have to be made. Right. We did take certain monies out of certain accounts that we felt that we could try to get by without them. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes those things may come back, and if they do come back, if we have to either hire other officers, send them to the police academy, there's a cost associated with that, and those decisions will be made then, taking what do we have, and it's tough decision making. You know, Mr. Klimm came in and he had a lot of tough decisions to make. Yeah. You know, and ultimately you only have so much money in a pot.
That's true.
And that's what it comes down to. Yeah. And tough decisions are made. Bottom line, you can sit and you can talk about all the different things that affect each of the line items.
Even in the most significant economic doldrums that we are in, it's the function of safety is always is an absolute. I mean, no matter how little you have, there's some things you absolutely have to have. And
right, and those things are
there's
warranted.
Safety. And,
yes, and those things are taken into consideration, and there's certain things that are untouchable. Yep. We have to have officers on the road for all 3 shifts. Yeah. We work 24/7. Yeah. So, I mean, the police department has to be open and can't shut down. Yeah. If people out there think that the police department maybe can shut down after 11 o'clock at night and not have any officers on the road, I think you'd have a business community and residential community that would be up in arms, because we do have break and entrance.
Oh yes, I recall when I first got here, I lost my lawn tractor. Somebody was coming around snitching lawn tractors out of sheds. Yeah. We'd gone a couple days and gone.
We're not immune, and Portsmouth is not the community that some people sometimes want it to be.
I know.
We would love it to be, but it's not anymore.
It's got issues. People are people, I guess. Speaking of issues that are of significance, the Code Red process. John, is that getting closer to?
Yes, about a month ago, a little over a month ago, the town council voted in favor of an appropriation to fund a communication system, and we went right to work. We formed a group of both staff people and some dedicated volunteers, and we brought in some of the leading vendors nationally, and made a decision recently to go with a company called Code Red. And now the chief has been asked to, I've asked the chief to kind of spearhead our effort from a staff standpoint, and we'll be entering training, I think, this coming week. And so our original goal was to be up and running by Labor Day, and I think that we'll exceed that. We'll have it in place before that.
Yeah. So how are we going to get the word out to everybody besides having just talked about it here?
Well, we're in the process of figuring out all the different avenues that we can take in reference to media, our websites, and notification through programs such as this.
And the whole outreach process is part of the training. So we're going to have people meeting with us who represent nationally the company, and they put together recommendations for any community in terms of how to get the word out effectively, and we'll be doing that starting with today's program, but thereafter through the newspapers and website and any avenue that we can. And obviously people will know it the first time we use it. And you know, we've made a conscious decision to be very careful about how we or why we use the system. We understand people's lives are busy. We don't want to be burdening them with phone calls if it isn't deemed an emergency. So we're real clear on that whole issue. But I think that the first time a youngster is lost or a hurricane unfortunately comes this way, I think that people are going to really understand the value of that decision by the town council to support the system.
We're probably due for another hurricane.
We probably are.
Hurricane Bob was the last significant one. Yep. Last one was difficult, but not nearly what Bob was. The wind turbine.
Yes.
Not the chief's business.
Thankfully, right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
But
You know, I should
what's
say,
the
let me-
latest thing on the wind turbine?
I'll get into that one second. I just wanted to say something about the fact that I know the residents of Portsmouth know how fortunate we are to have our chief with his leadership and management capacity over the years. But I had recently had an opportunity to attend the statewide Chiefs Association meeting, and it became very clear to me very early on in the meeting that our chief is not only appreciated and recognized within our town, but throughout the state. I witnessed other chiefs coming up to him asking him for his advice and assistance, and I just wanted to publicly say that it's been a pleasure working with our chief, and I'll tell the residents what they already know, and that we're blessed to have someone of his
Super.
capacity.
You're not saying this so that he doesn't retire. Much
That's
too
right.
young to retire. right?
Yeah,
The,
thank you very
the, the whole wind turbine issue obviously is a very complex issue, and I've been tasked by our town council to review the situation and make recommendations in that regard. To do that, we need to do two things. First of all, we need to fully understand what went wrong with the gearbox and what changes need to take place. But also going forward, it doesn't do a lot of good to spend a lot of time figuring out what happened or what didn't happen in the past, because we need to understand where we are now, and we need to think forward for the next decade. We have a $2.3 million note on this turbine, and we want to make the best business decision for the town going forward. And so that might mean simply replacing the part and moving forward, or we're also exploring the possibility of a private-public partnership where we might partner with the private sector and several possibilities, and so we're looking at that as well. So I'm going to be giving the council an update at the August 14th meeting, and then thereafter we'll be asking the council to make a final decision in that regard.
Sounds like that's one of your priority activities every day,
Yes, it has
amongst
been.
the many other things that you've been asked to do since you got here. Tremendous. Speaking of priority activities, anything on the Elmhurst School?
Yes, we meet weekly. We have a committee that's working. I have been tasked by the town council to work with our town solicitor and a representative of the Elmhurst Reuse Committee to negotiate the actual conservation easement. It's a document that is obviously a very important document, and it is one that must meet the test of time. What we're asking the citizens to do is to put an easement in perpetuity. And so obviously that means that we have to feel comfortable with the language of the easement. I would say that our work is painstaking, but I think the committee has done a good job up to now going through the document word by word, line by line, and we will be meeting Ted Clement shortly to begin that process of negotiation, so that in the near future the residents can actually see the easement, read it, make comment on it, so that when ultimately the town council holds a special election, which they decided to do next spring, it'll be clear to the citizens what actually they're voting on.
Very good. We are just out of time now for this segment, and want to thank both John Klimm, our town administrator, and Lance Hebert, our police chief, for coming and sharing their thoughts. Is there any last minute message you want to send out to the viewing public right now?
To the viewing public, yes, for our traffic enforcement, I'd very much like to ask people to please try and obey our traffic laws and try to create a safer community, and that if people do have problems within their residential areas in reference to traffic, that they are free to call the police department at any time, day or night, and give us as much information. If they wish to remain anonymous, please remain anonymous. We understand that you do have to live by your neighbor, but if there is a problem and there is safety issues, please don't hesitate to call.
Good. Thank you, Chief, and thanks everyone for watching. Have a nice day.